Hi, my name's Nikki. I'm the Obsessive Bookseller, and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be listing my top 10 series that I own that I need to reread to get back into. I have several where I've just started the first book and really liked it and then set it aside. As I've mentioned in other videos, I have a tendency of starting several books at once, and I have to say, my problem with starting series and not finishing them is not as prevalent as it used to be. I started a challenge on Goodreads a couple of years ago at our fantasy buddy reads group, an incomplete series challenge, and I started with 129 unfinished series, and I think at the moment I'm only sitting on about 40. And that's series that I could continue that I'm not waiting on the authors for. For this list specifically, it's books that I spent money on, that I have in my collection, and it's been so long since I've read the first book that I need to go back and reread before continuing. The first one on my list is the Vlad Taltos series by Stephen Brust. The first one starts with the Book of Jerrig, and these are pretty cool compilations. There's about 2 or 3 books in each one. I really like these. I don't hear a lot of people talking about them. They're one of those weird, like, hodgepodge of genres all thrown into one. It's a high fantasy concept and setting, but the pacing and the language reads more like an urban fantasy, so it's a cool crossover. And each one is a pretty well-contained little mystery. The books have an order assigned to them, but apparently when the author was writing them, he didn't have in mind any particular sort of order, which bothers me on some levels, but so far in the series, I haven't been bothered by that too much. At the moment, I have only read the first volume here, and I believe there are about 16 titles, so there was a recent sale on Audible where they were doing 70% off your wish list, and I had most of these sitting on there waiting for such a sale and picked up all of the rest of the audiobooks in the series for about $6. So definitely continuing that one now. Okay, the next one on my list is Wolf's Call. It is a continuation of the Bloodsong trilogy, and this is one of my all-time favorite authors, but it has been so long since I read the Bloodsong series that I don't remember anything. And so I really want to continue these and support the author, and I'm sure I'll love them, but I'm going to have to go back and read that whole trilogy. I may not do that because it's such a time commitment, even though I know I enjoyed them. Maybe just the first one to refresh myself with the characters, and then maybe skip around the third book to remember what happens. But in any case, I really want to read these, especially since I think he's done with the series now. He's got a new one called Pariah coming out in August. That's totally different setting, and I want to be ready for that one. Okay, the next one on my list is The Mirror Empire by Cameron Hurley. It's book 1 in the Worldbreaker Saga. And I read this one with a buddy read group on Goodreads, and I was not ready at the time to fully commit to starting a new series, which is a dang shame because this was awesome. Books for me that have really good world building always get a lot more credit than any other element within a book for me because I absolutely love world building done well. And this one, the writing style kind of reminded me of N.K. Jemisin in the Broken Earth trilogy because there was a lot of new concepts and unique ways of presenting things that I had never seen done in a high fantasy novel before. And it's really cool. It's got a lot of unique ideas and quite a few gender bender concepts that really kind of blew my mind and made me think really critically about what I accept in fantasy novels when things are done to women versus when things are done to men in this book. And it's just really good food for thought and very visceral. This book really had me committed and feeling things along with it. And I'm not totally sure I'm on board with where it ended and where it's headed in the next book, but because I don't know for sure that that's going to be the trajectory. I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt, but I definitely need to reread because there were a lot of characters and confusing back and forths because there's like an alternate dimension thing going on in here, which, by the way, usually I don't have patience for, but it's done well. So here's the next one. Okay, the next one I need to reread to continue is the Pure Trilogy by Juliana Baggett. And this one, I read the first book and half of the second one. And this one came out right about the same time that young adult dystopians were really popular. Even though I enjoyed all of those, I noticed pretty quickly that they all kind of followed the similar formula, and there was usually a really heavy focus on the love story. What I love about these is that there's not a strong romance in it at all. The concept is a lot grittier, and the execution is a bit more wild and out there. The basic premise is there's a dome where the pure live, and everybody outside of that who went through an apocalypse are kind of like fused to different items, and I think there's even a couple of people fused together as one of the characters. Anyway, it's a little bizarre, and that's kind of what I liked about it. It gives you that full dystopian vibe without any YA things, because it's not a YA. So it's one that got like a little weird, maybe a little too weird, but I'm not sure, but I still want to see how it wraps up. And it's one of those that I put down and never pick back up, and I'm hoping to get back to it soon. Okay, the next one, and this is actually probably near the top of my priority, is the Seventh Son, Second Son series by Jennifer Fallon. And I've read The Lion of Senate, and you can see my copies are pretty beat up, but I've only read the first one so far. And honestly, this is a great series so far. If you like any of the character-driven, slow burn, follows multiple POV classic fantasies, like, this is pretty good. It's got a pretty neat concept, and I've always enjoyed this writer. The only reason I didn't continue is because I had too many series started at once and just never got back to it, and now I feel like I really need a refresher. And incidentally, I have another trilogy by this author that I've been meaning to get to. The problem is, it's a spin-off of her Hyruthin series. The first one's Medallion, and I read it years ago and absolutely loved it, and then never continued with these, thinking, oh, I'll save those for a rainy day. But now the rainy day is here, and I don't remember anything about the first trilogy. So maybe after I finish my Abercrombie binge, I think this would be a fantastic author to revisit and dig into and reread everything that she has, because her writing really clicks for me. Okay, the next one is the Lightbringer series by Brent Weeks. And I'm counting this one even though I only got about 100 pages into the first book. Everything I read so far I liked, but for whatever reason I got distracted and never picked it back up. And it has been floating around my priority list to be read soon for about 5 years now. So I would like to get back to this one, especially since the series is finished now. I think when I started it, it hadn't finished and we had no idea how many books it was going to be. So I have no excuse now. Okay, the next series is kind of a guilty pleasure for me. It is the Dark Angel series by Carrie Arthur. I absolutely loved her Riley Jensen series. It's one of the first like paranormal romance / urban fantasies I ever read, which, by the way, usually the first one you read is your favorite for whatever reason, and I think that's probably the case here because I didn't have a lot of things to compare it to. Got all the cool feels from like all the new concepts that were new to me at the time. I don't feel compelled to go back and reread that first series. It served its time, but when I read the first one of this one, I quite liked it, and have just been stalling on picking up the next ones because they're kind of one of those comfort reads where I know they'll always be there, so I've been kind of procrastinating on them. But I think it's time to pick them up to kind of break up all of the other heavy fantasy books I've been reading lately. I think this will fit the bill perfectly. And also, I don't think these ones are as racy as the original trilogy, which is good because I'm really not in the mood for that too much anymore as far as in my books are concerned. So okay, the next one on my list is the Queens of Renthia series by Sarah Beth Durst. I read Queen of the Blood and overall enjoyed it. There were a couple of little things that I kind of nitpicked on it, but overall it was one of the better, I keep calling it a young adult book, but based on the format and feedback from other people on Goodreads, I think it was meant as an adult series. But the way it's written, the character ages, every single thing about it, with the exception of maybe just a slight grittiness, was written like a YA. So I think they were probably just trying to market it to the older crowd to make a little bit more money. I don't know. This one's on the bubble for me. I liked the first one enough to kind of give the second one a try, but the trajectory of the story has me wondering if everything I loved about the idea in the first one isn't going to be present in the second one. This one's a maybe, but her Race the Sands standalone was one of the best books I read in 2019, so I'm really hoping that this one will redeem itself because I know what the author is capable of. Reading a little bit more about the author, she has a really cool approach to writing and tells the stories that she's always wanted to read, and that kind of attitude and passion for what she does makes me want to support her and read a little bit more from her. So we'll see if I get around to these. Okay, the next one on my list is the Study series by Maria Snyder, and I actually think this is now beyond just the original trilogy. There's probably like 6 books now. And I read this one several years ago and quite liked it. It was a good story. I don't remember much about it, which might be a warning sign to me that I wasn't that into it. But around the same time frame I read this one, Throne of Glass had just come out, and I couldn't help but see how many similarities there were between the two stories, especially at the beginning. I think enthusiasm for both series kind of waned because I had just read 2 things that were incredibly similar, so I had no desire to continue on, especially since I ended up not liking Throne of Glass. That's a whole nother drama story. I've had these on my shelf for years, and I'm reasonably sure I'm going to enjoy them at least a 3-star level, so hopefully I'll get a chance to get to them soon. Finally, the Shattered Sands series by Bradley P. Beaulieu. So, as you can see, I have these gorgeous hardcovers. I love them. I'm really lucky that I found most of them on discount. Not the first one, though. Had to buy the first one at quite a premium, but I figured it all kind of balances out at the end. I read this book a couple of years ago, and it was just okay. I had a lot of complaints about it. It read very YA. It's one of those that I think would be a good transition novel between YA lovers and fantasy if you're trying to get into higher fantasy. But my biggest objection was that it had a ton of flashbacks that kind of confused the plot a little bit. There were passages where I was reading and I had to kind of flip back and reorient myself and figure out where I was in the story because they happened so often. And the problem was that completely halted any momentum the story was having up to that point, and it felt very disjointed. But, you know, the world building was pretty cool. I'm looking forward to seeing more of that in the future books. And overall, I liked the concept and the overall feel of the book. It had a really good atmosphere. So you really felt enmeshed in this world when you were in it. But I don't know, I didn't like it enough to set it aside and to wonder if I needed to get rid of like these beautiful copies. That's the thing too, if I start the series over again, I'm going to have to reread this one, and I know I didn't like it. So is it worth rereading that just to continue the series, just so I can justify keeping them on my shelves? And I just saw a review on Goodreads today from someone who thought the second book didn't work very well for them either. So I'm like, oh crap. So this may be the one exception of the series I keep simply because I think it's beautiful, and leave it at that. We shall see. So there you have it. All the books that are currently taking up my shelves that I either need to get around to reading or get rid of at some point. Some of these series I have been in the middle of for years now, And it's driving me crazy because I'm such a completionist. It bothers me that I have so many open-ended things. And from an efficiency standpoint, it bothers me also because now I'm going to have to go back and reread and spend more time on it than I had initially. Most of them I think are worth revisiting. There are a couple of them in there that I might just let go because I don't think they're worth rereading the first book just to continue on. But for the most part, I'm excited about almost everything that I showed. Yeah, do you have any opinions on which ones I should pick up first? Have you read any of these titles? A couple of them are kind of obscure. Thank you for stopping by, and I'll catch you next time.